It's still winter here. 6 to 12 inches of snow predicted. The garden isn't offering any evidence that it's a garden. No growth, no proof, no visible answers. And yet, the judgments are already loud. Somewhere along the way, gardening picked up a moral scorecard. Lawns are bad, natives are good, cultivars are suspect. If you can't eat it, why grow it? Non-natives are irresponsible. And the one that made me think, hostas offer no value for pollinators. It left me wondering, when did gardening stop being about paying attention and start being about passing judgment? This isn't a defense of lawns. It's not an argument against natives, and it's not a checklist for doing it right. It's a reflection on something I've noticed about how quickly preference becomes principle, how easily environment and circumstance disappear from the conversation, and how care can quietly turn into moral superiority. And what happens when we stop listening to our own gardens because we're too busy listening to the internet? Before we go any further, let me introduce myself. I'm Michelle, and this space is a lot like gardening. Some things take hold right away, others take time, and a few surprise us entirely. Hostas, gardens, friendships. If you're craving a more reflective way to think about gardening, you're always welcome here at Hosta Heaven. Subscribing makes it easier to return. And today, we're talking about judgment, virtue, and how easily we outsource our thinking instead of observing what's actually happening in our own gardens. I hear it mostly online. Not curiosity, not questions, certainty. Short statements delivered cleanly, confidently, and often competitively. Graphics with bold claims, simplified lists, top 5 plants you should never grow. Comment sections that turn into debates. The vague feeling that nuance doesn't perform well online. Because online, attention is currency, and controversy spends well. The more divisive the claim, the more engagement it earns. That doesn't make it false, but it does mean we need to listen more carefully. What started to bother me wasn't disagreement. It was how often nuance just disappeared. It vanished. Lawns are bad without context. Natives are good without conditions. Cultivars are framed as artificial, even when they're not genetically modified at all. And suddenly, gardening choices weren't just choices. They were character assessments. And here's the uncomfortable part. I didn't just notice this out there. I caught myself doing it too. Quietly, internally, with very reasonable justifications, I thought. It's amazing how convincing we sound when we agree with ourselves. I have found myself mentally evaluating someone else's garden choice, reading a comment online and instantly agreeing, assuming my approach was the thoughtful one, even now as I explore this issue. Last season, a customer came into the nursery looking for natives. She was very clear about that, and she appeared tired. She had a patch of yard that was bare dirt when dry, mud when wet. Kids tracked it inside. The dog loved it. She'd tried native wildflowers from seeds for multiple seasons. And the native group she belonged to kept telling her, be patient, which may have been true, but patience wasn't solving her immediate problem. She didn't need a philosophy. She needed the dirt handled. She wanted plants that were already growing, and she chose Apache rosegrass, a cultivated form of native switchgrass, selected for structure and its really pretty rosy seed heads. She also chose Firefly Red Pop Yarrow, a cultivated native with red blooms. And some others, maybe a butterfly weed or black-eyed Susan, I can't remember anymore. But she was relieved, not because she'd abandoned her values, but because she'd found a way to meet them within the reality of her life. Standing there talking with her, commiserating a little, I remember thinking, this is what real gardening looks like. It's not slogans, it's not perfection, it's not principles. It's just someone trying to solve a real problem in the space where they live. Mud, kids, a dog, a patch of ground that wasn't working. Yeah, I've heard we call that mud season. And a person trying to care for it the best way they knew how. Here's what struck me. Nature cross-pollinates constantly. It's not a human invention. Cultivars don't automatically mean interference. Often they mean selection for vigor, health, or behavior. Stronger stems, longer bloom times, plants that stay where they're planted. Well-behaved plants matter. Invasive plants are a problem. Home landscapes sometimes need plants that don't spread aggressively, plants that hold their shape, plants that don't overwhelm a smaller space, especially when you're gardening near your home. Lawns didn't begin as aesthetic statements. They were practical. They reduced insects near homes. They limited snakes and critters from coming too close. And they created visibility and access. Context matters. Just like it matters that Allium millennium is not a native, no matter how popular it is and how beautiful it fits into a, sunny border with the rest of the natives. Yet it was named the top pollinator-friendly perennial by the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, the largest arboretum in the United States that's affiliated with the zoo. After formal scientific pollinator counts, they found Allium millennium attracted the most pollinators. Gardens rarely follow slogans. This is where the distinction becomes clear to me. There's discernment, insight, and maybe a little wisdom. And then there's judgment disguised as care. Discernment remains curious. Judgment needs to be right. Discernment responds to place. Judgment applies rules universally across the board. And virtue, when it's performative, stops being virtuous really quickly. Hostas are not native. They are also non-invasive, water efficient in the shade, and stabilizing to the soil. They provide shelter to frogs and toads in the summer. They prevent erosion, especially on slopes. When I first noticed hostas, it was because they filled spaces where other plants struggled. I was impressed by how they quietly solved difficult shade problems. There are other shade plants that solve some of those problems too, but when you have a lot of shade, you need a lot of plants, and there are a lot of different hostas. When we don't cut the flowers, the hosta flowers, they feed hummingbirds and bees. And if you leave the leaf litter and the flower stems, your hosta garden provides protected spaces for bees and other pollinators over winter. Hostas don't just take up space. They behave well, and most people who love them found them while looking for a solution to a real problem in their landscape. I, for one, fell in love with their performance, and I continue to love their variety. There's something to learn here. Context matters. I'm not interested in gardening as moral theater. I'm interested in gardens that work for people, for place, for the lives moving through them, the people, the insects, the animals, and other critters. Deer have to eat too. Nature is adaptive. Gardens are contextual. And our job isn't to prove virtue, it's to pay attention. Gardens have always had these debates. Victorian gardeners argued about elaborate bedding displays. Cottage gardens were once dismissed as messy. Formal gardens were criticized for being too rigid. Wild gardens were criticized for being careless. Every generation seems to rediscover the same question in a slightly different way. What is the right way to garden? And every generation answers it with a little more certainty than the garden itself ever does. Sometimes preference is just preference, wearing a moral badge. Noticing that, without defensiveness, has made me a better gardener. And it makes me wonder, where else in our lives do we quietly turn preference into judgment? If the garden is where you contemplate what life reveals, you're always welcome here at Hosta Heaven. Until the next chapter, in the Hosta Garden.